So then you start looking at the different elements of it. And the first thing that strikes me, of course, with any E.E. Cummings poem is kind of dueling things. First is form, and second is language. So let's talk about the form first. If I was going to pay attention to form, I would look for all the places where the form seems to be very strange. Okay, because when you find exceptions, sometimes in the exceptions you can find an interesting thing to talk about. Okay, so here you have the beginning of this poem is entirely off to the left from the rest of this. Okay, and this is not an error. This is the way the actual poem was constructed. So that's interesting, and I might question that. And even the idea of in just spring, this idea that just with a hyphen and spring, but they're separated, and we get that repetition from here. Okay, that's an interesting thing format wise. Then there's all these spaces. Okay, and as you're thinking about your poem, you want to start grouping ideas together. And you're doing this because you're not just because you're brainstorming and you want to group ideas together, but also you're trying to think about a structure for your paper. So I'm thinking of things I might write paragraphs about. Okay, this is just super preliminary things I might want to talk about. I don't know what I want to talk about related to those things yet, but things that seem to be happening over and over again, things I might want to talk about. So in form, I might talk about these spaces. So we have these big pauses, right? Here and here and here. And then we have one here and here. And that's a repetition of this up here. And then we have the one word line. And then you have the set off. And then goat-footed is set off again. So the strange use of spacing could be a really important thing to talk about because it's not just one place, it's all over the place. So you want to ask yourself, okay, this poem is about spring and it's using really weird spacing. What is this poet trying to communicate to me? What do we get from this poem? What do we come away with? And it can even be kind of an emotion. It doesn't have to be some kind of like life lesson, it can be an emotion. So is E.E. Cummings trying to tell us something about spring or about life from these elements? And then in terms of, that would be form. The other thing to notice about the form here is that there isn't a single piece of traditional punctuation. No commas, no periods. The only thing that we've got is the occasional hyphen. And it's not a dash. A dash is two hyphens. The occasional hyphen to join two words together. And even then, they're not always joining two words together. Okay, like for example, just spring and mud luscious. We have puddle wonderful, but not everything is always being joined in that way. So really the only piece of punctuation we have is a hyphen, and that's it. And that would be something interesting to use as well. And then with E.E. Cummings, you always have this delicious use of language, sometimes making up words that you've never heard before, okay? But that definitely have a kind of resonant meaning. So something like mud luscious. Just say that word out loud, mud luscious. When you say that word, it conveys so much, okay? Or something like puddle wonderful. And the idea of a goat-footed balloon man, and balloon man being one word, but with the M being capitalized. There's just a lot of really interesting uses of language here. And then there's the idea of Eddie and Bill and Betty and Isabel. Why do that? Why would he do that? Why smash names together? Because these are pretty common names, okay? Maybe not common now, Betty and Isabel, but very common perhaps when he was writing. So another thing to consider is that when you are reading a poem and maybe you don't understand something that they're using, consider the time that it was written in. So this may have been written in a time when Betty and Isabel and Eddie and Bill were very, very common names. And so putting them together, what does that do? What does that communicate? How does that help us understand what they are creating? So then after my kind of initial reading of this poem, and I've got this really interesting use of space, got this really interesting use of language, and these sort of snapshot images, right? You have marbles and piracy, you have hopscotch and jump rope, you have a goat-footed balloon man. What the heck is a goat-footed balloon man? All of these things. It may seem entirely weird to you, and if it does, that's okay. Maybe this is not the poem for you. But maybe it seems intriguing. So I've got this space and form issue, I've got language, I've got these images. That's 3 big elements that I could talk about in my paper. And then, so what I would do from here is I would start thinking about that big question that paper number 1 needs to answer. What does the form and the language communicate to the reader? What is the poet trying to say to the reader through this particular poem? What's the meaning, and how do these things contribute to it? And I'm not going to answer that for you because I want to see what you can do with it if you so choose this poem. But that's the process. That's how you go about doing it. And remember that meaning or that message, again, doesn't have to be a huge moral life lesson. Sometimes it will be, but it's going to be more than just the literal meaning of the poem. It's got to be something else, something that the poet wants you to come away with, something that he or she wants you to feel, something he or she wants you to learn, something he or she wants you to change your mind about. And those are usually what the message or meanings come down to. A lot of students hesitate to state that in their thesis statement. Please let me tell you that I'm looking for you to answer that question in your thesis statement. The rest of your paper shows me how that happens, but that thesis statement needs to tell me what you're going to say, what your argument is, and that's the argument, is answering that question. So hopefully this has helped a little bit in understanding what close reading is and understanding how to approach it. A lot of students feel very lost. Hopefully this at least helps you to see what you can do with a poem and what you can do when faced with something that looks crazy. What can you do? How can you start to create meaning out of it? I just also wanted to mention that, let's go back to, of course, this is our homepage or one of the home pages. Remember that on the syllabus itself, and I'm pretty sure this was in the introductory lecture video, but I'm getting questions about it, and so I want to just be very clear. Every week has its own folder, and so every week has its own set of instructions. So this is week 3, and very shortly this lecture will be up on week 3. But this has the short response prompt, and then the place to submit that, and then the topic proposal email assignment, and those are the things that needed to be posted. Remember, you have to use your syllabus course schedule, which has the dates, with this week-by-week breakdown. Okay, you have to use those together. They're meant to be used together. Otherwise, you're going to be very, very confused, and you're going to be emailing me questions that don't need to be asked to me because you could answer them yourselves by just looking at the syllabus. So just a quick reminder to use the syllabus and the Blackboard site together in tandem, and that's how you're going to be able to answer your questions. I hope that this has helped. I hope that this has sort of cleared up some of your questions about close readings. Basically, close reading is just something that you're just going to get better at as you practice it. It feels very uncomfortable at first. Don't fear the discomfort. See it as learning and growing, and just do the best you can. That's the purpose of having a short response that's a practice close reading, so that you can kind of exercise those muscles a little bit, get some feedback, and then move forward with your paper. Okay? So anyway, hopefully this has helped, and good luck. And I guess let me know if you have pressing questions. Otherwise, just sort of try to push through your discomfort. Do the best you can. Watch this a couple times if you're still confused. Read over that handout again, and remember that you can look at the Purdue website. The way that I got to this, quite honestly, is I googled close reading and poems, and this was the first thing that came up, and it's a really reputable site, so you can use that, okay? I'll probably post the URL here on your week 3 as well, okay? So good luck, and I wish you good writing, and I think you'll do great, and have fun with it.